Hey everybody, I don't know who's here, but it is showtime. I'm Liz Davidson of Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here with Saverio Spagnolie, and we are going to play some. We've had problems pronouncing this before, so give me the help that you gave before, because it was really good.
The key to remember is that it's actually two words, Vijaya and Nagara. And Vijaya means victory, and Nagara means city. So it's City of Victory, which you may have seen as the title of a recent Salman Rushdie effort, but it's Vijayanagara.
That helps so much. It helps so much. Just knowing that it's two words actually was like really good for me. All right, so Vijayanagara is here, and we are going to do an Alone Together stream. If you are out there and you have questions, by all means, ask. But we're just going to talk about this game. It's like half interview, half gameplay. We're going to play through a couple turns, and we'll stop at about an hour. That's the current plan. So I guess my first question is, Saverio, what interested you in this particular topic? You and all three of your co-designers.
The backstory of the game was that it was part of this Consim Game Jam, which was organized by Fred Serval and Joe Dewhurst and Sean O'Keefe. And it was the first one. It was in the middle of COVID, and we got together, and the rules for the contest were to recycle a coin game. So reuse the parts of a previous entry in the coin series. And I had, at that point, had Gandhi out on the table sometime recently before that by Bruce Mansfield, and thought, that's been such an interesting experience. I wonder what else we could do with that. And then it was just a mad dash to go back into history and see what might fit. And just the bones for this game just emerged. I don't know if they wanted to be found for this purpose. So you could just see the kind of the sweeping narrative and the factions. You could kind of make out what might be the primary movers and what was driving this century of dynamics. It just kind of all, you just kind of see the bones of it quickly. And then that was the beginning of it, and then 3 years later, we understood things well enough and had sanded things down to publish.
Was the history of India something that was already an interest for you, so you knew where to look?
I've India specifically, I didn't know that much about. I know a lot more about other parts of Southeast Asia. South Asia, I have a number of students and postdocs who are from India, so that's been a little bit, I mean, my into India so far has been through physics. And so, but historically, it was for me, and I think for a lot of players who come to this game, kind of a new part of our shared human history that we just don't learn about in this country. And so that drew me in, and I figured it would draw other people in, and then when you know, as with anything else in life, you start learning a small thing about either a topic or a subject, and then that makes learning the next thing about it kind of more interesting and possible, and then you start building out from there, and then all of a sudden you have a wealth of understanding of not just this period, but related periods and distances nearby. And so that was kind of the development part, where it came from. And since then, of course, there have been a lot of other aspects of the journey, which were totally unexpected, but we at some point early on brought a historical consultant on board, Aparna Kapadia at Williams College. She and some other people at the University of Wisconsin, where I work, were able to basically open up lots of doors into other researchers who've been very prominent working on this period of history. And we've been in touch a lot. Actually, there's one book in particular, India and the Persianate Age, written by Dick Eaton. He's at University of Arizona. He's been working on this area for decades, many, many decades. And he's coming to Madison in maybe a week there's an annual conference for South Asia, which always happens in Madison, fortunately enough for me. And so he's going to come, and we're going to play this. And he's very, very interested for obvious reasons. I mean, if you spent decades working on a historical subject and then out of nowhere you get contacted by someone who's produced something of this type, I think that'd be pretty entertaining. So,
yeah, for sure. So was it immediately obvious let's do like kind of teach and explain. I think that makes sense. Was it immediately obvious there needed to be like 3 players in this game? Did you think about having more or fewer? And then also, like, how did you decide what they wanted? And let's segue that into like the actual goals for the game.
Yeah, I don't think it obviously had to be 3 players. There are some other factions that could have been elevated to playable. I mean, the most obvious one are the invading Mongol armies, which play a role in this game. They're just a non-playable faction. Their roles are taken by both the Vijayanagara Empire and the Bahmani Kingdom, two of the factions get to control what the Mongols do from time to time. We could have fleshed that out into a fully playable faction, although I felt like it was kind of a little bit tangential to the dynamics in the subcontinent. They didn't penetrate further south than Delhi, for instance, during this particular century. They'll come back later as the Mughals. But I think I think I just really like 3-player games. And I think there's something kind of magical about just the right mix and balance, the self-balancing, I mean, games like Maria, I think, are just wonderful. And so I think for me anyway, and I can't speak to the other designers, that was an immediate draw for me. And so I think I probably was, that was behind my desire to find 3 playable factions, but it was very natural in the end. So, the Bengali Sultanate would have been an option, but it's not as prominent as the ones that we have here for this particular story anyway. And then what do they want to achieve? Who are they? What are they trying to do?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you see the big events, you learn about the big events early on, and then you can try to characterize and classify them through things like dynasties and emergence and births of new empires. So you have these big hits, and I think that just standard thing, and that's going to draw your attention to, what led to this event occurring, what brought this about, why did this group of people feel the need to cast off their relationship to some other greater power in a very maybe potentially violent or certainly a very sudden event. And then you start reading a little bit more and you see that, okay, so if it's the Vijayanagara Empire in the south, the yellow faction down here, it had maybe a lot to do with the fairly oppressive taxation being levied upon them by a distant power, the Delhi Sultanate up in the north. The Delhi Sultanate wasn't stationing troops in the south. They would just come knock on the door from time to time. Expectation was, you're going to send some gold, you're going to send some horses, you'll send some elephants, and you'll send it every year. And that will just be the arrangement. And as soon as that starts getting too stiff, then there's just a natural desire for independence, to keep local wealth for yourself, to build, have control over your autonomy. So it's in some sense as simple as that. The Bahmani kingdom is a little bit different. Actually, the Bahmanis are a breakaway faction from the Delhi Sultanate. They're composed of minor rulers who also had some stiff requirements in terms of their interactions with the Sultan in Delhi, the all-powerful Sultan, but nevertheless had their own large network of, they had a large trade network. They were very healthy economically. They were powerful, but it still took something which pushed on them a little too much for them to feel the need to break away. In this particular case, it was that the new Sultan in Delhi, and the second Sultan in this game, and the second dynasty, does as it becomes very Game of Thrones, really, this narrative, this century. And as you would expect, at some point, the Sultan is going to become paranoid, and they are going to start seeing threats left and right, and then they might do something hyper aggressive, like there was an assassination of 89 emirs or rulers in the south in one shot, for fear that they might be trying to usurp power. And this led to an immediate response and the birth of the Bahmani kingdom. So just playing with those ideas, playing with what were the kind of forces moving in the background. I guess the last thing I'll say in answer to this question is, what's driving the Delhi Sultanate? Is it pure greed? I don't think so. I mean, there is, if you'd have the ruling class in Delhi, they're certainly aware, and they have been aware for centuries, that there are great wealthy kingdoms in the south, and it's certainly very appealing to plunder. And if you're trying to maintain power and control, you need to go and get those resources in order to share them locally to keep power. But it's not even just quite as simple as that kind of maybe dark and unpleasant underbelly. You also have this constant and unexpected raiding coming in from the northwest, from Mongol armies. And that leads to the Sultanate needing to maintain a standing army in the mountain, the Mongol invasion regions, as we call them, like Punjab and the mountain passes. It's just very expensive. So they start to have their own, the first kind of standing army in this period. And so as is always the case, nothing's clear, nothing's clean, everything's a mess. And but you start to see some of those guiding forces for why these factions might be trying to do what they're doing.
Excellent. And then how do those motivations translate into actual game terms? So how does each faction score points? And how does that relate to the history that we just talked about, like in short form?
So this game, it's an asymmetric game based on the different abilities and interests of these three factions, but it's immediately asymmetric just based on where the points start off. The Delhi Sultanate starts off with 18 points. The Bahmani Kingdom and the Vijayanagara Empire start off with 0 points, and the points are calculated differently. But at the end of the game, whoever has the most points wins. So the Sultanate's victory points are based on, if you look at each province has a prosperity value, either 2 or 1, and it's based on how valuable those regions were. The regions like Gujarat and Maharashtra and Karnataka on the west coast and Bengal on the east coast are more valuable because either they had maritime connectivity to Central Asia or otherwise trade routes, primarily for things like horses, which do not grow nicely in India for whatever reason, so they need to be imported. Every province is either in a tributary relationship with the Sultanate, so the tributary province, meaning that the sum total of the rulers, minor rulers there, are continually sending back payment to the Sultan, or not. So once that marker gets flung off, this becomes an independent province, and that independent province can be controlled by whichever faction is there, in this case, the Bahmani Kingdom, and they would plant their own flag of independence as a consequence of controlling and having a majority of pieces. So the Delhi Sultanate's points are simply the total prosperity of all of their tributary provinces. They really want to maintain, they want to keep the money flowing. So they want to make sure that the rulers in all of these regions are in an understanding about the frequency of payment. And they begin the game with all of these tributary markers down on the entire subcontinent. How are they going to keep them there? Well, it's essentially defensive. They are going to try to keep the other factions from ceasing payment. And that would be something that they do all at once together. The Bahmani Kingdom can throw off a tributary marker. When they plant these flags to become independent, they gain that prosperity. So that's part of their victory points. And when they do that, the Sultanate loses victory points, and that comes into, the points actually enter into some of the actions in the game. So for instance, the Delhi Sultanate has basic commands and special decrees. For those who play coin games, this will look like operations and special activities, and they work very much the same way. But the commands are conscripting more troops, marching them around the country, governing, placing very dangerous governors who potentially may have some loyalty issues. Or attacking, and their special decrees are to collect tribute. That's just gaining those resources, and it depends on their current points. So they are really incentivized, not just for the points in the game, but so that they can do what they need to do economically, which is more historically, I think, narratively interesting. It depends on their current points. Large campaigns, which were done during the century, and demanding obedience, which is how they send a governor down to a region and plant that tributary flag back down to make sure that the rulers there are in understanding of the arrangement. The Bahmani Kingdom is gaining points by becoming independent, claiming their own prosperity with these regions, and building forts, which are defensive in nature, protecting them. Also allowing for attacks on neighboring regions to where the fort is. And the Vijayanagara Empire is similar in the sense that they are also trying to cast off tributary markers to gain the prosperity values in those independent provinces, building temple towns, which are beneficial for rallying more local rajas or rulers to their flag, and has economic benefits. And then finally, there's a bit of a tug of war between the southern factions, the Bahmani Kingdom and the Vijayanagara Empire. There is what's called the Deccan influence track, and this is in some sense a foundational myths tug of war. There are a lot of minor rulers in the south who aren't really sure, as the Delhi Sultanate's curtain peels back on the subcontinent, it's not entirely clear if they should be aligning themselves with one or both, in some cases, of these two factions. And so these factions gain points based on their influence, which can be affected by economic means, it can be affected by military means, and through some events. And once again, it's not just about points, but with better influence, the Bahmanis have a better trade network. This allows them to gain cavalry more rapidly or to conspire with the governors of Delhi more effectively. And the Vijayanagara Empire, which was enormous. I mean, going back to us not learning about this stuff in the US in schools anyway, usually, the Vijayanagara Empire, the capital city was like 500,000 people in the 14th century. This is the second largest city in the world behind Beijing at this time. It's huge, sprawling. And so, you know, when European nations are looking for pathways to Indian riches, I mean, to a large extent, they're looking for the Vijayanagara Empire. I've now gone far afield from your question, but
no, that was good.
Okay, maybe I'll just leave it at that, because I'm not sure to what extent the people listening to this will have already played this to know things like building forts, trading, and conspiring with those governors who, if they're too far away from Delhi, may actually be Bahmanis waiting to emerge. And finally, the Vijayanagara Empire, which is able to tax as their special decree to build temple towns and to compel, with a little bit of extra elbow grease, some new alliances. And if you're sufficiently influential, those new allies can do a little bit of dirty work for you on the side and also gain some cavalry, which is hard to come by for the Vijayanagara Empire. It's the Bahmanis who were militarily dominant in this particular era between the two of them.
Excellent. Molotov Cocktail wants us to know that a recap is always welcome. All right, so I know this is a 3-player game, but who plays with 3 people when you could play by yourself? So tell us a little bit about the solo mode and how it works, and then I was thinking we could just slow walk through a couple turns to show people game flow.
Fantastic. So the first thing I want to say is that the solo mode, I mean, we had built a 3-player game, which, you know, obviously takes a ton of time in terms of all the details, balancing, what have you, at the end. And that was going to be it. But then it was Jason Carr who said, you know, what I strongly think you should do is put a solo mode together. And at the time, that was a little bit devastating because of just how exhausted, you know, we were. But looking back, I'm really grateful that there was that push, because what it ended up being was basically a new design in some sense, as you will fully appreciate. It's just a different animal.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I really like the way it came out. And what I like the most about it is that I think what was most important to us in its development was that this game has a real narrative, right? As any game wants to have, but for this century, I just really liked the story, and I wanted to at least retain a lot of the important dramatic beats of this century without having to shoehorn it. You know, I don't want to railroad the history in here. It's still a sandbox of sorts. You can still explore, you know, ahistorical narratives, but I still wanted the fundamental narrative to really shine through. And that means in this game that the bots play by all of the rules of the regular game. And that includes resource usage, which has not always been the case for this type of game. Even if they're playing by the rules, there's some things that are done with resources, which you might have to do in a larger game. But in this one, especially with the way that the Sultanate responds to a dwindling economy, which drives a lot of the history, I felt like that had to be part of it. So the bots really do play by the full rules of the game. And they're driven by a system which I think originated, I mean, I actually don't know the full history on this. Of course, the early coin games started with solo player aids that had flowcharts. Flowcharts, thank you, for just, you know, you'd walk through how does this faction going to act. And one of the nice things about these coin games is that it's all open information. So you really can just explore like that. But there was a very nice advance, I think, on these ideas, which came with, I want to say Gandhi being the first, with Bruce Mansfield's work. And between Bruce and Jason, they built what was a really, really nice, I think they would say, ergonomic structure, which kind of encodes a lot of that flowchart into these player aids and these space selection tables, for instance. So each faction has 4 of these action cards, and they are at the beginning of the game just shuffled up independently, unlike some other coin games, but they're shuffled up. Let's do that independently. And you know what? Why don't we learn this as we go a little bit?
Yeah.
Why don't we pick a faction and sit there? Do you have any preference?
Do you? I was gonna say, what faction should we be? We've got a Bahmani Empire fan, a Bahmani Kingdom fan in the audience, so maybe we could be the Bahmanis for
We're
Chip.
going to sit as the Bahmani Kingdom. I like the Bahmanis. And so we don't need the Bahmani player aids. That's going to be us. We don't need these cards. But for everyone else, let's go ahead and shuffle up their action cards. Another thing that we thought would be important to offer is some difficulty settings. And so before we get going, let's just look at the bottom right. I don't know if it's clear enough to see, but of each other faction's player aid, we said that there's different setup instructions. Do we want a normal challenge? Do we want a hard challenge? Or are we using this as a single bot against 2 players? That should take the hard level. Or do we want to go full expert? And I was playing full expert a couple days ago just to refresh my memory on this, and it is very difficult. So I think maybe I think we'll just stick with the normal setup, if that's all right. Let's
do. And let's take just a couple questions really quick. Matthew's answered one of them. So Molotov Cockatiel want to know, how much design or development time did adding solo mode add to the total? And
did Matt answer that one?
Yeah, he's coming to say maybe
I was going to guess like 4 or 5 months. Yeah, that's right.
Excellent. And then Mike wants to know if y'all have had any experience with the game Maharaja from Avalon Hill.
Mike, I have never played it. I have to say, I'm sorry. Yes. Answer's no.
But there's always more time for more games, right? We'll get them all in before we die.
All of them. We'll do all of them at some point. Okay, so we're going to leave the normal setup. Like hard or expert would place a couple of extra temples out there or shift a little bit of influence, but we're just going to start it. And the way the game, I'm not going to teach the game, I guess, so we'll just some knowledge of the game.
The walkthrough. Let's do it.
All right, so let's just start with the first card, and the first event card is the Kakatiya Empire, one of these very wealthy kingdoms based in Warangal in the south, extinguished by the Sultanate, who tired awaiting tribute. So we see on the top of the card that the Delhi Sultanate is the first to act. So we'll just go up to the player aid card, and just to look at the anatomy of this card, on the top left is that's where you would start on any card to see what's the Sultanate going to do. The dotted grid is how is it going to select spaces. If it's going to place troops, we just kind of work down from top to bottom, as we'll see. On the bottom left is what does that faction do in the 3 important succession cards that split up the game. On the top right, it tells you how do they use cavalry, how are they going to use events, how are they going to move, and what are the peace priorities. So that's the anatomy. Now, what do they do? We've already shuffled this deck, but when it's the Sultanate's turn, we look at the top left. It says, do they have less than 3 resources and at least 6 tributary prosperity? They have more than 3 resources. They start off the game with 12. So that is irrelevant, and we skip it. Next is the command and decree available? And it is. And then the instruction there is just draw for command and decree. The Sultanate is very taxed with its action economy, so it is more often than not going to take that command and decree. Which command and decree do they do? We are going to look at their action card. We'll draw off the top and take the next card down. And we just read from the top. Here we go. Are their resources greater than 12? And do they have more than 9 troops in one space? Which would mean, are they getting ready to maybe do a big campaign? They don't have more than 12 resources. So instead of moving down the left with the arrow, we move to the right, which is flip the card. 3d6 is less than the number of available troops. So that is something we have to roll to find out. Let's take 3d6s. And Liz, I'm sorry, I feel like I should be letting you kind of...
No, I don't mind you doing the controls. It's all good. I'm terrible at
tabletop. Just let me know in what sense you'd like to jump in.
Oh, I will.
So that's 11. We have 10 troops. And so here again, the answer is no. So we move down along the right. And the next check is, are there at least 3 available governors? And we have 4 available governors in the Sultanate's available box. So
all right.
Finally we get a hit, and we move down with the green arrow, and we are instructed to govern. Now, in order to use the solo bots, you kind of need to know the rules of the game. And that's at least certainly very helpful. Because they play by the rules of the game. So if you're given an instruction here that looks like you could cheat, something's not right you should be playing by the rules of the game. So the govern priorities, we see the first priority would be to remove any obedient units. That's part of selecting where are we going to govern. And I also want to point out on the top right of this card, it says max resources, meaning the Sultanate is always going to spend as many resources as it can to do this action in as many places as possible.
All right, so it's going to blow all the money.
It's going to spend as much money as it can. It's going to govern, and right now it's got 1 governor down and 4 to be placed. It's going to end up costing us 5 resources, but where do we place them? So when we look on the space selection table at govern, which is the 3rd column, scrolling down, we see that the first dot is where if we are independent in a space, we need to get a governor there so that we can demand obedience. But the game has just started, so we don't have any independent provinces, which means we just skip right past that dot. And we go to the next priority, which is that it's going to be a province as opposed to Punjab or the mountain passes in the northwest. So we're just going to look at provinces. And after that, we have fewest opposing pieces, but at least 1.
Okay, so we want to mess with our opponents, but not get into a fight we can't win.
Exactly. We don't want to be too delicate here. So fewest opposing pieces, but at least 1 has us looking at Gujarat, Gondwana, and Tamilakam. But the next dot down after that had 2 prosperity, which means that the first province we would look at is Gujarat.
All right, so maximum money, minimum opposition.
There you go. And just remember on the card, it also gave us an additional priority, which was to remove any obedient units. If you know the game, you know that a governor can remove up to 2 obedient units, and it would do that first. Then to place Kasbahs, if possible. So the second priority is to place a Kasbah. The governor who's already in Malwa will then go first. So he'll place a Kasbah with govern. That costs 1 resource. Then to get the rest, which is in provinces using place governors, I jumped ahead of myself and I was looking at place governor. So we decided that the next one would go in a province with the fewest opposing pieces, but prosperity 2. So that's the next one in Gujarat. The next would go, well, there are no other provinces that have the fewest opposing pieces, which in this case is 1, and are 2 prosperity. So after that, we just slide down to province with the most troops so that they're more protected. So it looks like we're going to do anything that has 1. So
Yep.
2 more resources. And then for our last governor, there are no more provinces with only 1, which is the fewest opposing pieces. But then we go to the next fewest opposing pieces, which in this case is 2.
2. So are we going to wait? Would we choose? Which one would we choose?
Oh, good. Okay, I didn't even notice there. We have Andhra and we have Madhya Pradesh, which both have 2 opposing pieces. So to break that tie, now we go down and see province with the most troops.
Okay.
The governor wants
Kasbah is not a factor here. It's the troop count, the queues.
It's just the troops. And so thank you for catching me, because it's actually Madhya Pradesh that gives the governor the best protection here. And that got 1 final 12 down to 7. There it is. So that was the command. And then we look down to see what's the decree. The first priority would be to demand obedience. This is where if there's an independent province, they would plant that tributary marker back down. And now they've got governors out there. So the bot did a good planning as far as ordering is concerned. And then collect tribute. So to collect tribute, they're going to add half of their tributary points. So add 9 plus 7 is 16, and they gain 2.
No, they spent all that money and they got it all back.
They
got horses.
In the beginning of the game, the Sultanate is enjoying a lot of resources, and if the southern factions let the Sultanate enjoy those resources for too long in the game, they will regret it.
Uh-oh.
And that's it for the Sultanate.
Okay. That was a big turn, though. All right, so just for people who are not sure how to play this game, I want to look back at the sequence of play just to kind of talk about how what everybody else will do comes into play. So in a coin game, basically, if you go at all, you end up ineligible. But this is a regular conflicts game, and so there's different options. So basically, by taking command and decree, that means nobody else is going to take command and decree this turn. But somebody can do event or command, And then the third person, if they want to, can do a limited command and remain eligible for that next card. So all of us are going to get to do something. Just these 2 spots aren't necessarily going to lock everybody up. And the other thing is that everybody could just do a limited command and stay eligible. They don't have to do one of these, even if there's the option.
Both of the things you just said were in service to reducing downtime for players and just part of general streamlining. And so every faction can play on every card if they're eligible. If they've taken a big turn like the Sultanate just did, they will be ineligible for the next card, as you said. But any number of factions can just take a limited command, meaning a command in only one province, and then stay eligible for the next card. In addition, 2/3 of the events in the game have a stay eligible feature, which allows you to take the event and slide back to eligible. So there's just a lot more kind of dynamic and some gambling on, do we want to stay limited in the hopes of being first eligible on the next turn? So there's a little bit more of a rapid fire in that sense.
What led y'all to, I guess, have so many events that allowed you to stay eligible?
That was in service of reducing downtime. I feel like it really depends on the coin. This isn't a criticism of the coin games that do this. It's a different model. There's different intent. But for what we were trying to achieve with this particular game, we just liked the idea of people being engaged with every card, ideally, or every other card, worst case scenario. But the moments in a longer game where you might sit out for a card or a card and a half because you're last eligible or ineligible, you can end up sitting out for 20 minutes or something like that. And so this game is meant to be like an hour and a half or less. And so that kind of downtime just doesn't really work. So that was the aim with the stay eligible. Of course, that means that the strength of the stay eligible events are lesser. There are some events that you don't stay eligible, but those are huge events. And so it might be worth spending it in that way.
Excellent. All right, so it's not our turn yet because the
Next up is the Vijayanagara Empire. What are they going to do? Let's look at the top of their card. Perform the first available action. First up, they cannot rebel. Is that true? It's true that they cannot rebel because the beginning of the game is in the Khalji dynasty. Fierce, oppressive rule births opposition, but protects a growing Delhi Sultanate. Alauddin Khalji will not be allowing any rebellions with his firm grip on the subcontinent during the first stretch of the game. So Vijayanagara is not going to rebel. The event is available. Now, is it effective? What does it mean for an event to be effective? It's what you think it is. It's on the right side of this card. Events are effective if, in this case, they add Vijayanagara pieces, or the sun is the Deccan influence for Vijayanagara, or cavalry, or gives them money, or adds Mongol invaders, which is a problem for the Sultanate. Any of those things are effective. And so if we look at this event, it would be effective. It gives the Vijayanagara Empire, the unshaded part at the top, would give them an influence, and then they can compel. So it's definitely effective. So are they going to take it? They cannot rebel. The event is available and effective. Okay. They may or may not be willing to go for it. They're going to roll. So it's either 1d3.
Ooh.
Always take the events. That makes it a little hard to know what they're going to do. They're not going to take the event. So we continue down. Less than 4 resources? No, they start off the game with 7, so they're fine. They don't need to tax immediately. Do they have at least 1 resource and command a decree is available? No. Move down. Is the event effective? Yes. And has stay eligible? Still no. This card does not have stay eligible. Otherwise, it would say it right underneath the title. So this is them saying, if I can get a quick event and it's still eligible and I can't tax or do other big things, I may as well go ahead and do that. Lastly, if they have at least 1 resource, let's just do a limited. So Vijayanagara is going to do something that a human player, I think, would probably want to do in this situation, which is to just do a quick, small effort and to remain eligible for the next card.
Got it. So not biting this time. So they're going to do just a little something to stay in the game.
You got it. So what are they going to do? We're going to draw for that limited command. So let's just take the top card off. Oh
no.
Some touch mouse excitement over here. Are there at least 7 Rajas in 1 province? At the beginning of the game, certainly no. That would be unusual to see in a game, but it can happen. And if that happens, then the bot is going to want to flow outward from Karnataka, probably. So because that's not true, we flip to the other side. Are there at least 2 available Rajas? Okay, I apologize. This top box is for selecting a decree. We're not doing a decree. They're doing a
Oh.
limited command. So the rules state that we skip that and just move to finding the command. Are there 2d6? Is 2d6 less than or equal to the number of available rajas? So we need to roll 2 dice to find out. Let's take these 2 dice. 3. So 3 is definitely less than or equal to the number of available rajas. Available rajas is currently 8. So the instruction then is moving down to rebel.
No,
So
but we can't.
Indeed. So the southern factions are going to want to rebel as soon as they can, the bots, except for the fact that, as we were just saying, the rules of the game state that during the Khalji dynasty, there shall be no rebellions. And so on Vijayanagara's rebel command, you can see there's in bold, only available during the Tughlaq dynasty, which is the next dynasty. So what do they do since they can't do that? Rally, using place rajas. So they're going to rally, which places rajas from available. Where are they going to do it? We look at the space selection table. Place raja. The top dot is to prosperity. First of all, where can they rally based on the rules of the game? They have to have a Vijayanagara piece in that province already.
All right,
so
it's going to be Karnataka.
It's and it's going to be Karnataka.
All right.
Now, how many do they get in Karnataka? The rules are 1 raja, but +1 if Karnataka. It's a bonus. So they get 2, another touch mouse failure there, and that costs them 1 resource, and that's it. And that is something that's worth remembering, which is that they do not take a full decree and command. They're just doing a limited command. They're done. That's it.
All right, now it's our turn.
Let's I think if it's all right, would you be willing to take the helm of the Bahmanis here? I'm doing a lot over here. I can't think straight.
Okay, so So can you enlarge the event card one more time for everybody?
The event is available.
So here's the thing. The event's available, but we don't want that event. That doesn't do anything for us. So we're going to have to obviously take just a limited command. I think that's our very clear best option. So let's look at a menu and let's see what we've got. So we can rally. So that means we can pull some more pieces out. I mean, that's never a bad idea in my opinion. We can migrate, but I'm not really sure where we'd want to go just yet. Rebel is not yet an option, or we can attack. So I'm thinking probably a rally is our best first choice. And we can place up to 1 Emir, and then here, let's get my.
Sorry, I'll pull that back up.
No, it's okay. I've got my little menu right here at home. So we can also do a +1 if we do it in Maharashtra.
You got it.
So I think that we should definitely do that. And it's another +1 if we're in control, but we're not just because we're a tributary, right?
Correct.
So even though we have the most pieces, which is kind of a coiny way of establishing control, we still do not yet have control of this place.
What they have is a majority. Whether they are face down or face up is whether they are obedient in the eyes of the Sultan.
Right.
Or rebelling. Obvious to the Sultan as an opposition force. When they are obedient, the Sultan may still suspect that something's not quite right, but they can't attack them outright. They're still paying the taxes. It doesn't feel good. They can send a governor down to govern them into small committee work rapidly, however. So,
ew.
But that's right. Right now, at the beginning of the game, they are all on the surface obedient.
All right, let's get some people on this map. I think that's our best choice. I guess we have to spend money. It should all be free for us.
And that's it. So the factions here become ineligible for the next card.
Oh yeah.
And these 2 factions are eligible as we move forward to the Virupaksha Temple, which is the cover that graces the temple that graces the cover of the game. It's beautiful.
Excellent. All right, so that ends the first turn, and let's pull. Did you just pull that event card?
I pulled this next event card.
Oh, it's another crappy event card for us. Blah blah blah.
We
don't get to do anything cool yet, but that's okay because that just means that our turn is coming.
Maybe they'll take the event and we'll be able to do something big.
Maybe.
Let's find out.
The Sultanate is not eligible, so we have an opening potentially here.
This is a time to move against the Sultan, maybe. Yes, that's right. So you'll learn something historical if you play this game and the two southern factions just start beating each other up immediately while the Sultan is in total control. I think they'll learn pretty quickly that that may have been a way for history to bend against them in a major way.
We're gonna keep sweet with our other neighbors in the south for right now. I think.
Okay, so do you want to lead us through this, or do you want me to?
Here, let me pull it up. Okay, so we are looking for we're looking to see they are eligible, and we're gonna see basically I'm looking up at that top left corner, right? What's the first thing that we can do? So we cannot rebel.
Check.
The event is available and effective.
Check.
So that means that we need to roll and see if we're gonna take the event.
They roll a 1.
Okay, so that means they are gonna take that event.
They're taking the event.
They're doing it. All right, so they get 1 influence, yes.
1 influence, which brings these 2 potential allies into a slightly, they might be more interested in this empire now. Vijayanagara is on the board.
They got some stuff. It's getting scary.
Sorry, there we go.
Okay, and then they may build, then in each province with a temple, they could replace a unit with a Raja. So basically that means that they're replacing somebody else's piece with one of theirs in that case. So let's see if they can build first. So they want to get temples out because that is going to get them some points. So I guess we need to look at this chart and figure out where could they build.
I guess first the rules of the game are that they'd have to have units or a Raja where they're going to build. So it's got to be one of these 3 spaces, but which one brings us to, as you say, the space selection table?
Exactly. Okay, so let me have a look here. Okay, so place temple is what we're looking for. We're looking for a place with 2 prosperity before anything else. So that's going to take us right back home to Karnataka.
No surprise there. They're beefing up the home turf.
I mean, it's not a bad plan.
It's not bad. It's certainly a sensible play.
Indeed. And then that's all they could do, right? But if they had built in a place with one of those troop cubes, they could have also then converted it to a Raja, correct?
That's right. Now, what would they do, though? If we look on the right on peace priorities, if they're going to replace, there's a list of which pieces they would replace first. So, for instance, they would target a governor before they would target a troop. So there's a kind of an ordering of danger that they have in mind.
Very interesting. Oh, I have a question. Just if we get to the point of random at the bottom, what does random mean and how do you decide that? Is it just like you just pick up a die and you're like, okay, well, 1 to 2 is this place, 1 to 3 to 4 is that place, and 5 to 6 is that place? Or is there a more involved way to determine that?
In mathematical texts, there are sentences like the proof is left for the reader.
Ooh.
So we basically leave that to the player. In almost every case, it's as simple as there are 2 choices or there are 3 choices. And so it's pretty natural to come up with a solution there, taking a die and either rolling it, and then it's either even or odd, or 1 through 3, 4 through 6, or if it's 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But we have left this to the player to decide.
Got it. Fair enough. All right, so that's the end of their turn, correct?
That's it.
All right, then the Sultanate cannot go.
Correct.
And that means that we could go for a big old command and decree, which I don't think is a bad idea at all. I think it'd be fun to take a big turn. And then actually we've got enough time to play just one more. This like you just can't stop once we started. No kidding, we'll stop at an hour. But okay, so what's the most exciting decree for us to do right now? Because trade means we get money and horses, which is never a problem.
Money and horses is good.
Building is good. The Vijayanagara Empire just did that because that's not a bad plan. It gets us points. Conspire. We can form bonds with aggrieved elites. Just as flavor text, I absolutely love that. We do have places that have governors that we could get rid of, which would be fun potentially for an upcoming.
Not only is it fun, but it may be the only way that the Sultanate doesn't decimate you quickly.
Right.
Because what a governor can do if they govern again is they can remove 2 obedient units, sending them into lower level administrative duties.
Yes.
And build a Casbah. This is a really dangerous situation right now. Those governors are in your face.
Yes. So I think we need to rock the Casbah and possibly get rid of some of those governors. Okay,
Yeah.
so what is a good command to pair with that? Do we need to move anybody around? Should we rally? Are we good the way we are?
It's worth maybe saying that unlike certain coin games, or at least in this particular one, you can take the command and the decree in either order, but you can't go back and forth like in certain volumes. So you could do conspire and then rebel. That's sometimes fun. That's a very thematic one. We can't do it just right now
I
because the
know, it's
holidays are
brutal.
coming. But you could migrate into a region that has a governor and then conspire with that governor. That would be a way to stretch out a little bit, although we don't seem to need that right now.
No, we don't need that right now because we can do 1 or 2 provinces with one of our pieces. We could just go ahead and knock out 2 of these governors.
That's right. It's also maybe worth noting that if you're going to trade, you want to have a nice big trade network. They get money depending on the number of provinces with a Bahmani peace. So migration early and spreading the wings is not a bad thought, especially because if they stay obedient, then they're a little harder to remove.
The other thing we could do is we get influenced by moving into an area that has a Vijayanagara Empire peace, correct?
Good thinking.
I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have to fight.
You don't.
We
You
could
can just
just
build some nice step wells and some
Right?
aqueducts and impress the locals, and there you go.
We just want to peacefully hang. It's fine. Nothing could happen. So maybe what we could do is we can pay 1 to move some emirs into. Do you want to say Andhra? Because
I
Karnataka
like
does
Andhra.
not seem like a good idea. That seems like a terrible idea.
It'd be an interesting strategy to just try to distract the faction by sending someone into their hometown. But I think Andhra is probably a more sensible place.
Let's go with Andhra. And then how many emirs should we move, do you think?
It's up to 3, and with a
2?
full command, we can choose a number of different spaces to migrate into. So it doesn't have to just be 1. But for now, let's take Andhra. And you thinking 2?
Yeah, let's move 2. 2 is a good number.
Okay.
It kind of evens us up with everybody else there, so we're not like outstandingly distracting.
As you say, it costs 1 to do the command, but then on the bottom of migrate, we see shift influence in only one of the locations. If any emir moves into a province with a Vijayanagara peace, they may spend 1 more to do a zero-sum influence shift, and it sounds like that's
I think
what
we
you
should
want to do.
absolutely do that.
And with that extra impressive payment, influence goes up and down. These 2 Rajas who were thinking maybe Vijayanagara was kind of back on their own. No, not so interested. And the Bahmanis are on the board.
There we go. A point. I like it. And then I do think we need to conspire. Let's like talk about our feelings with these governors and then make them our governors. In truth, they can go really well.
If you were influential, if your influence was just a little higher, you could even reach out to neighboring provinces, and even that could work out for you.
See,
and you could even communicate with some Rajas of Vijayanagara and convince them that actually the Bahmanis are where it's at. But right now, it's just 2 where you already have a piece.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking?
All right, so we are just sweet talkers. Okay, let's do Gujarat because it's got 2 prosperity, and I like that.
That governor is actually looking very nice in turquoise now.
Right? It's just a better color on you, man. You look great. And then what are we thinking here? Okay, so here's the question. So our other options are Madhya Pradesh and Gondwana.
Yep.
Which is smarter in terms of our current peace count and situation? Because Gondwana seems nice because there would be no pieces belonging to the Sultanate there left. So that seems tempting to me, but is there any reason to mess around in Madhya Pradesh instead?
Madhya Pradesh is very central, as is given by the name, which means that if they excise you, they'll cleave you in half, they'll plant a Casbah. That could be pretty uncomfortable. But if they do that, then maybe you're free to run off to Bengal and start some other part of your network. Unclear.
See, Bengal is worth some money over there.
It is.
Maybe we go with Gondwana, I think.
Gondwana it is.
I enjoy running off to the side and being annoying to people who then have to work to come get me. So
it is very annoying. Yeah, no, it takes some effort for the Sultanate to get out there. Very historical, I must say. Okay, yeah. That's it. So that's your big turn.
Indeed. And, Matthew wants me to know that I've made the riskier play, that there was a more conservative play. Why would I do that? Come on, man. All right, so now we're in a place where neither of us is eligible. Why don't we see what that looks like, and then we can chat, take any final questions, and we'll call it just we could talk about like sort of how the game will progress as we move through the decks.
For the sake of exposition, why don't we imagine that third card was one
Yes.
of the many Mongol invasion cards
Oh
that are
no.
interspersed throughout the deck.
I mean, oh yes.
So the rules we'll remember of the game are that whoever is being asked for assistance, in this case the Vijayanagara Empire, they're going to be asked which 2 Mongol commands should be chosen. And it could be the same command twice. To figure out which one, there is a card here, which we just walk down. Are there 2 commands remaining? There are. Would advancing troops get at least 3 more Mongols than troops in Punjab? They haven't even started to roll yet, so that's false. And this is a typo. This needs to be corrected. The first one should have said Delhi, because if they can go to Delhi, they'll attack in Delhi. You can see it on the bottom left that they would advance and then attack in Delhi. So can they do it in Punjab? Also no. So we just flip. And then we're just looking for spaces where the Mongols really outnumber the Sultanate and should attack there. But they have no Mongols anywhere yet. So really the only thing they can ever do at the beginning of the game is to amass. And that just moves 3 Mongols into the mountain passes.
Let's go.
But now for their second command, we start over. Are there 2 commands remaining? No. So we flip. And now it's not entirely clear what's going to happen. So you can't plan ahead perfectly. Are there any spaces with 4 or more Mongols? No.
No.
And then we would roll a 1d6, and we would check if that number is less than the number of Mongols in Delhi. Right now, there's no Mongols in Delhi, so that's not going to work.
Right.
There are no Mongols in Punjab, so that's not going to work. But we do get to this last check: 1d6 less than the Mongols in the mountain passes. And so they might amass more, or they might attack right away. And they are going to attack right away.
Let's go. Get them.
How do they attack? We've got 4. I'm missing. Where is that other die? Here it is. So we've got 4 dice for the attacker, 2 dice for the defender, in this case, the Delhi Sultanate.
Mm-hmm. And does this work the same way as other combat? So like basically if you can do this, you can do any other combat.
If you can do this, you can do any other combat. That's
Perfect.
Right. It's all, I mean, there's little tweaks, very small tweaks in there. If you were to attack Bahmanis with a fort, you would only use 3. If you're attacking Delhi, if the Mongols attack Delhi, the Sultanate in Delhi, you'd only use 3. But otherwise, this is the same as anything else.
Good. So y'all are going to know how this works when you play on your own.
The Mongols are going to try to get 3 or less because they have 3 Mongols in the mountain passes. The Sultanate's going to try to get 2 or less on each die because they have 2 troops or units in the mountain passes. But we don't carry this out just yet because we've yet to use cavalry.
The horses.
The horses are a critically important resource during this century, so they are important in the game. I should say a 6 is not a hit. However, cavalry can be used to change these things. The Mongols always have a cavalry. Cavalry can be used in one of 2 ways, either to charge. What charge does is it reduces a die by 1 pip, so it could take a 6 to a 5. If you had multiple cavalry, you could change the same die multiple times. But that's how, if there were 5 Mongols, they could turn that 6, which is always a miss, into a hit with that cavalry. In this case, it doesn't matter because they've got 3 hits, but and there's not much else I can do about that. But before we look at the consequences, note that the Sultanate has 4 cavalry tokens. Right now, they're not hitting at all. But cavalry tokens, as I said, can be used to charge, to reduce the pips, so they could reduce it down to a hit. We'll see what they do.
That would cost you a lot.
It would be very expensive. Or they can do a defensive screen. What a screen does is it cancels out a die from the opponent altogether. A 1 cannot be screened. That's it for the minutia. That's all the rules for combat. So currently, we have to figure out, the Sultanate has 4 cavalry. What do they do with this situation? Let's go look at their player aid card on the top right. Cavalry, charge only. The Sultan bot is an aggressive competitor. They're going to save those horses for when they are going to try to, do some offensive work.
All right, so they're just going to take it on the chin up here.
that's it. So it looks like there's 3 hits for the Mongols, which means they're going to remove all of the troops there. The Sultanate will do no damage to the Mongols. And then at the end of any attack, on the bottom here, on attack and plunder, we see that for each invader left in the space after the attack, Sultanate's going to lose 1 resource. So they're going to lose, because it's a mountain passes, 3 resources.
Oh, no.
Had that happened in Punjab, it's 3 resources, and 3 troops from the provinces must be recalled to available. If it's in Delhi, it's if it was 3 Mongols, it'd be 3 resources and twice as many. 6 troops must be recalled from a panicked sultan in Delhi who needs them to come back to the north.
Excellent.
And that's it for the Mongol card.
Beautiful. So hopefully this is giving everybody a good idea of game flow. But the other thing is that, so we played sort of the first part of the first act where you can't rebel. How many decks are there in the game? And let's talk about the game timer and how it works. Because if you play coin, this doesn't work the same way.
There are, how do I want to say this? There are essentially 4 acts. We are in the middle of the first act, which is composed of just 6 event cards and 2 Mongol invasion cards. And at the end of those 8 cards total, we'll get to the first, oh, that's not coming, there we go.
There
the first succession card, which has a little flavor text, and it's the zenith of the Delhi Sultanate. This is when they're at their peak, but it's also when they start to see some succession crises and things begin to whisper that there could be a problem coming in the coming decades. So that's the first act. At that point, the Khalji, Alauddin Khalji, and his successors are no more, and it is the Tughlaq dynasty. And this eccentric ruler leaves Delhi more vulnerable. The rebellions will start to happen. There's a shifting gears right at this point in the game, and it starts to get a little bit more fireworks in the south. So that's then the second act is 6 more event cards and 2 Mongol invasion cards. And then the third act is again 6 event cards and 2 Mongol invasion cards. And at the end, the fourth act is a potentially truncated act because this is the second succession card, Rise of the Rebel Sultans, and then Lords of the Deccan. And then the final stack is 6 event cards and 2, instead of Mongol invasion cards, it's the Timurid Empire, which will be rolling through to knock on the door of Delhi. The first one just is a warning, and the second one leads to an invasion of Delhi by the Mongols. They play out the battle until there are either no more Mongols or no more Delhi Sultanate troops or units. And then the Sultanate gets an additional +3 points depending on how well they do there. And that's the end of the game. And so depending on when those 2 cards are shuffled into that last set, it could be a short ending or it could be a longer ending. There could be some drama, not knowing if we've seen one. Do I have a chance to do one more big action? Should I save it and gamble with a limited command? It gets tense at the end.
I like it. So for everybody out there, if you have a last minute question, this is your last chance. But hopefully this gave you a good idea of how the solo for this game works and whether this game is for you. I think it's awesome. So I'm super happy that you came on. Saverio, this is great.
I'm really grateful for your time and your interest. And yeah, thanks a lot. I look forward to seeing you around in your upcoming projects.
Indeed. But everybody, this is Vijayanagara. This is a fantastic game. It's in the Irregular Conflict series from GMT. Matthew, I'm also glad that you were in the chat. Thank you for being an invaluable contributor.
Can I say just briefly how wonderful it was working with Matt during the pandemic? That was the best part of the pandemic. It was amazing working with the whole design team and working with Joe Dewhurst, who is Magical Creature. So it's all been great. The folks at GMT are fantastic.
We won't tell Fred how much we love Joe Dewhurst on this channel. And then just one more question as the kind of close out. What made you want to explore this time in history? We talked about it a bit at the start, but
I didn't know anything about it. That for me is extremely alluring. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I think these games are so wonderful, is that it's just a portal into a different time and space. For me particularly, it was COVID, and I remember thinking many times, like, I would love to get out of my apartment, but I would also not mind leaving this point of time in the timeline. So So just diving back into the 14th century, and I have there are postdocs and graduate students that I'm around who are from India, so I have a little bit of a general awareness of certain modern ongoing political situations, and my plug-in is usually through math and physics, but this was just yet another neat thing that I could start adding to my understanding of our global human history.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you again, everybody out there. Thank you so much for coming. It's been so wonderful to have a lovely chat going while we play. And everybody out there, please like, subscribe, comment, ask questions, and most of all, happy gaming.